Radio IKIM Inspirasi Infora Islami. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon to the dear listeners of IKIM FM. Welcome to the final episode of Shaping Tomorrow for its ninth season. I'm your host Batrisyia Afrina, and being with me today I have Dr. Muhammad Syafiq Borhannuddin, fellow at the Center for Economics and Social Studies IKIM. Assalamualaikum Doctor.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And how are you, Doctor?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing fine. And doctor, flies so fast that without we realize we have finally reached the final episode of this season. And dear listeners, throughout the past episodes, we have learned a lot, especially about the potential of Islamic civilization offers to solve the world's problems. And one exemplary country is Uzbekistan, where Dr. Shafiq shared his experience from his trip to the country. And during that, he described how the country has made efforts to preserve its culture and also its heritage. And for today, a final episode of this season, Dr. Shafiq will be sharing insights about Syed Muhammad Naquib Al-Attas, a significant figure in the Muslim world. And so, Doctor, what will you be sharing about today's topic?
Thank you very much, Patricia. Yes, indeed. Alhamdulillah for this season. I think we have been discussing and learning a lot about Islamic civilization, and as you said, how it continues to be pertinent and relevant to the various challenges that we face today. The figure that we hope to reflect more and to share more about with our listeners and viewers today is a renowned figure. Some may know him quite well or may have heard of him, some may not. Uh, but the figure by the name of Syed Tan Sri, Syed Professor Dr. Syed Muhammad Naquib Al-Attas,
Mm.
is actually, I would say, is part of this story of Islamic civilization. He is part of that legacy of Islamic civilization. In fact, he continues that legacy of our forefathers of Islamic civilization because he's one of its great inheritors in the modern world. He inherits many of the wisdom, the knowledge, the 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 the, the insights of the great scholars of the past, which shaped Islamic civilization. Now, another reason why we want to talk about him for this last episode of the season is because he was just inaugurated, he was just awarded and declared Man of the Year in the Muslim world.
Man of the year.
Man of the Year for the Muslim world for the year 2024, actually. But in the tradition or in the practice of this particular think tank in Jordan, based in Jordan, which produces or publishes this particular volume, which lists down and highlights the 500 world's most influential Muslims, right?
Mm.
Uh, so they do it a year ahead of the in terms of announcing who's the world's 500 Muslim influential Muslims, as well as the persons of the year in terms of whether their achievements is in the scholarly realm or in the political or in the social realms. So you can find the fact that I think it's already reported in our some of our Malaysian mainstream news that Professor Al-Attas has been announced as the Person of the Year in the Muslim world through this particular entity and through this particular declaration. And basically, what this declaration or this entity is saying about Professor Atas is that he's been an intellectual giant of the Muslim world for over 6 decades, and I think this is the most one of the most accurate things to be said about who Professor Atas has been for the Muslim
Mm.
world. He's a giant. He's a giant in the sense that he has done so much that is pale in comparison with many others.
Mhm.
So we don't have that many giants anymore. In the past, we had many giants. We had
Yeah.
Al Ghazali, Al Bukhari, Al Ibn Sina. And sometimes they live within the same time.
Mhm.
In our present time, we don't have that many. We have them, but we don't have that many.
Mhm.
So, but interestingly, the party or the group or the entity that says this is not a Malaysian entity, but they are a very respected and quite a renowned entity in the Muslim world, based in the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Jordan is a state, I think, bordering Palestine, bordering, I think, few Muslim countries, like I think like Egypt also.
Mhm.
They are quite a small country, but they have very learned monarchy, and this entity, Royal Islamic Study Center, is indeed founded by their monarch, by their king.
Mm.
Previously, I think their king, who had a lot of interest and concern on um, about the state of the ummah globally, is King Hassan bin Talal. He died in, I think, about year 2000, 2001. Sorry, King Hassan bin Talal. Yes, he was the one, actually, during his time, I think in the 90s or 80s, that this Royal Ahlul Bayt Institute for Islamic Thought, based in Amman, was originally founded. This is the logo at the bottom in Kufi script. And this entity, in turn, founded another research entity called the Royal Islamic Strategic Study Center. And this RISSC, Royal Islamic Strategic Study Center of Jordan, is the one that is responsible to try to do a survey and make sure that those Muslim individuals, figures, whoever they are, have done a lot of contribution, and have achieved a great deal in the Muslim Ummah, that they are recognized accordingly, right? So the
Mhm.
one that who declared that Professor Altas is the man of the year in the Muslim world is not a Malaysian group. It's not any political group, but
Mhm.
it's by in fact an entity, although founded by a monarch, a royal member, the king of Jordan, but actually they are consist of scholars in the Arab
Scholars.
world, Muslim world, right? So
Mhm.
definitely this, I would say, this is based on the opinion or the decision or the consideration of scholars,
Mm.
because this Royal Islamic Strategic Study Center is founded by I think headed by a scholar who is also a royal member, but a very learned one. His name is Prince Ghazi bin Muhammad,
Mhm.
who has a PhD in Cambridge University and Al Azhar University, two PhDs. But the two pictures that I'm showing you here is the two figures I mentioned earlier. King Hassan bin Talal is on the right, one of the great and most respected king in the Arab world in the 20th century. Uh, uh, and on the left is he was once the crown prince of Jordan during King Hassan's time. His name is Prince Hassan. Sorry, uh, Prince Hassan bin Talal, and that's, sorry, I think King Hussein, if I'm not mistaken. I have to.
Innocent. Mhm. It's like
King Hussein of King Hussein of Jordan is on the right. Right, he's the figure that very much respected in the Arab world for his diplomacy, for his engagement with Western world. Right,
mhm.
very learned and charismatic, and a man of integrity. This King Hussein of Jordan, and on the left side is Prince Hassan bin Talal, who is his cousin, right? And in
Mhm.
the center is Professor Al-Attas, being greeted, or who's shaking hands with King Hussein of Jordan. The particular occasion of this, I'm not sure. I think I remember reading about it, but I don't remember, because Professor Altas is such a renowned figure even in the Arab world, that even someone like King Hussein of Jordan knows him. So I
Mhm.
think I think back in the 90s, Professor Atas was appointed as like a senior fellow of this Royal Al Bayt Institute for Islamic Thought. So his expertise and his knowledge was recognized even by entities as renowned as this in the Arab world. So these are the people behind sort of publication, right? Although not directly involved, but basically, the reason I'm telling our listeners and audience this is so that they know that the kind of people who announce this is not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry, but people who have intelligence. Like Prince Hassan bin Talal on the left, I think he studied in Oxford University, but in the same time, his knowledge of Islam is very good, is very deep and very thoughtful, right? Well read. Same
Mm-hmm.
goes with King Hassan. He's quite a visionary and he's quite a very knowledgeable man on Islam, as well as very educated in the Western sense as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they respected these people. They knew Professor Latas and they respected Professor Latas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is he Man of the Year? Some people may ask, in case you have not been following the sort of the news or what Professor Latas, Professor Latas has been doing. You know, he's already 93 years old, Batrisyia.
93 years old.
3 years old. He was born in 1931, so he has seen everything in our Malaysian history. Even he was born before independence. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I dare say every prime minister in our country knew him or have had contact with him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Professor Atas, because partly because he was why he's so known before I go further on this why he's the Man of the Year, because
Mm-hmm.
he's quite known among the Malaysian aristocratic and political elites because he's part of the family that has a sort of a great grandmother
Mm-hmm. Great grandmother.
who comes from the Ottoman period Turkey, was
Mm-hmm.
sent, who first married a Prince of Johor,
Oh, Prince
and
of
then
Johor.
when that Prince of Johor died,
Mm-hmm.
he this lady, the great grandmother of Prasatas, married Prasatas' grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
Syed Abdullah Hussein Al-Attas, Syed Abdullah Mohsin Al-Attas, and then when they had to divorce, this grandmother of Prasatas married the sort of the I think the grandmother or the grandmother of Dato' On bin Jaafar, the founding member of UMNO.
Mm-hmm.
So Prasatas is coming from a family who is connected to three different families.
Royal families.
The royal family of Johor, the
Mm-hmm.
the family of Said's of his grandfather, and the
Mm-hmm.
family of On Jaafar,
Gotcha.
whose descendants include the likes of Hussein On, our third prime minister, and Hishamuddin, Datuk Seri Hishamuddin, right?
Yes.
So these three big families are connected through um, one lady
Interesting.
who was connected to the Ottoman period. So that's why he's quite known as well among the political and aristocratic elites of Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but aside from that, he is quite like Prasantas is quite a figure in his own right in terms of his uh, achievements and his knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you more about what he has done after this. I will share you more for in the interest of those who are not familiar with his work. But I believe the reason why he's the Man of the Year, he's declared Man of the Year, is because of this particular book that he just completed in 2023 at the age of
Mm-hmm.
93.
A new book.
A new book.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a man he does not use the computer to write. He
Oh,
uses his hand. Every book of his he writes by hand with a pen on a piece
handwritten.
handwritten on a piece of paper. But of course
Mm-hmm.
he would get somebody, his students, to type it
Mm-hmm.
up for him. So this is a man who writes every book of his using a pen. He's of that
Interesting.
generation. He's of that
Eh,
generation. He's
The classic generation,
the
not the
classic
modern generation.
generation, like the scholars of the past. And he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to access the internet to find his materials or sources to refer to. It's all
Mm.
here, and the books that several books that he needs to refer to, and the Quran, of course, and he refers a great deal to the Quran.
Yes.
So incredibly, this is a book, and on top of that, he's 93, and he had a neck accident some years back, so he's not physically as he was when he was
Mm-hmm.
young. And on top of that, he lost his hearing at a young age because he served in the military, and
Oh.
he saw combat against the communists. So since then, since his 30s like that,
Mm-hmm.
he wears a hearing aid. He cannot hear very well.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the circumstances. And there are more. There are many more circumstances that shaped him, or that characterizes him. But this is a man who completed another groundbreaking and significant book, not only for Muslims in Malaysia, addressing
Mm-hmm.
an issue not for Muslims in Malaysia, but Muslims in the whole world. So that's why the title, I think, will tell you many things. It's titled Islam, the Covenants Fulfilled. The covenants referring to the Arabic term mithaq that is referred to in the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
There's two covenants that is very important in the Quran that Professor Al-Attas draws our attention to. But basically, all this discussion about Islam, the covenants fulfilled, basically is basically to address a very big confusion that is also happening among the learned Muslims in the West and in the Muslim world. So Professor Atas is writing this because he's very concerned about the future of the Muslim Ummah in terms of their understanding of Islam, in terms of in terms of, because the times are not getting easier, Patricia, for the Muslim
Mm-hmm.
world. So for him, if he doesn't tackle this in this book, then things might get worse for the Muslims in
Mm-hmm.
terms of their understanding and practice as a result as a Muslims.
Yes.
So this book was eventually launched in July 2023 in PWTC. This is the poster I'm sharing for those of you watching on our social media. So it was launched and it was graced by Her Majesty Rajizare Sofia, the Sultanah of
Mm-hmm.
Johor, the Queen of Johor, who has been a loyal and a keen, excuse me, who has shown a keen interest in the work of Professor Atas. And this shows the kind of intelligence, the kind of wisdom that Alhamdulillah that we have in the Queen of Johor, who soon will be our Permaisuri Agong, the Queen of
Yes.
Malaysia, Rajizare
Mm-hmm.
Sofia. So she gracefully launched the book, and as well as delivering a brief speech, a royal address to commemorate this particular event. Such a beautiful and memorable event, Patricia, in
Mm-hmm.
July. And this is some of the pictures that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And Raja Zarif, because Her Majesty studied in Oxford. So she's a very learned person. You can tell from her speech that she knows this is a gem that we have to support and benefit from, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the man of personal task. So these are some of the pictures of the event of the book launch, which and the pictures from the picture one of the picture from this event is displayed in that 500 influential Muslim which declared Prophet as Man of the Year in the Muslim world. So I suspect this must easily be one of the reasons why they thought that Prophet easily is the Man of the Year in the Muslim world, because at that age he
Mm-hmm.
can't even stand up and walk in a long distance anymore. He was on a wheelchair for this
Yeah.
event, Patricia. And
Mm-hmm.
to go on the stage, they needed two or three persons to help to push him up because it's a very steep sort of
Uh,
stage, for him to go up.
mm-hmm.
So they had to so and imagine that the energy that a 93-year-old man
Yeah.
needs, to prepare for the event.
Mm-hmm.
And this man, Prasanta, he doesn't use slides. He just speaks
Yes.
off the cuff. There's no notes in front of him. Everything is here.
Mm-hmm.
Everything
Everything
is
in his head.
everything is in his head. Everything is in his
Mm-hmm.
heart, and he speaks. And he's been doing this for years, for decades, in the Muslim
Mm-hmm.
world, right? And
And
people
it's
will,
very
yeah. You were saying?
it's very inspiring, at the age of 93 years old, he still have energy to even write, to spend time, to share
Yeah.
about his knowledge to the world.
And with all that physical constraints, and his wife
Mm.
just passed away when he was about to begin writing this book. His wife
Oh.
just passed away. But
Mm-hmm.
still, that does not deter him. He still fought through like a soldier, because he is a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Continue
Very
to,
interesting.
yeah,
Not just
continue to
academician,
overcome.
but also as a
Yes,
soldier. as a
Definitely,
fighter.
he's a soldier. He was a soldier. He fought in combat, in active combat during the
Mm-hmm.
communist insurgents in Malaya
In
those days,
Malaya.
right? And he was trained in
Mm-hmm.
the Sandhurst Military Academy. But I mean, yeah, we can talk more about his biography maybe later. Okay, but there were hundreds of people in this event, the book launch of this event. Many dignitaries and ambassadors and royal members of the family, corporate leaders. You can see people like Tan Sri Azman Mokhtar here. You can see Datuk Sri Zamri Abdul Kadir, who is now recently appointed as the Higher Education Minister. Royal members of the family. You can
Mm-hmm.
see younger politicians like Khairi Jamaluddin was in the audience. Many people, celebrities. So a lot of people,
Different
uh,
peoples.
yeah, were very interested and intrigued to get to
Mm-hmm.
know and to listen from him. And then not only that, after that book launch, which he did talk a bit about the contents of this book, he felt he need to do another one. So there him again with a wheelchair on the stage. You know, this
Mm-hmm.
time in the University of Malaya. This I believe
Mm-hmm.
was a few months ago in University of Malaya. Again, it was a full house, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, he spoke without just maybe just a piece of paper there, but he spoke without any slides, and it captivated the audience, and
Mm-hmm.
in the University of Malaya. Now, I will talk a bit about him because actually, a lot, I think some information can be found about him on the internet, but maybe some things may be missed when you read on the internet. So I'm, alhamdulillah, through my affiliation with some of his students, I think there are certain things that maybe I could emphasize so that our viewers and listeners may notice more about who is this man who basically worked chiefly and lived chiefly in Malaysia, but then
Mm-hmm.
became the man of the year in the Muslim world. And in fact, his achievements, as mentioned in that publication, is his. I think it's not just for the last past year. It's like for the last 6 decades.
She's
It's just that
decade.
not for the last 6 decades, for the last 60 years. It's just that not many people may be aware of him so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think aside from the fact that he published many books, 34 books and monographs, smaller publications, which have been translated by other translators into Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Urdu, Bosnian, Russian, German, French, Japanese, etc. Oh, of course, that doesn't mean much these days because people can use AI. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact that all his books have been translated into this language, it shows that people are interested, even
People all
non-Muslims
around the world.
around the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I believe even the Russian Academy of Sciences gave him an award once, right? He has many awards. A very
Many.
very sort of recognized man in the world of learning, world of academia, world of knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he also, I think, one of the most significant achievement of his is he founded an institute, almost like a university. The short of that institute is called, the acronym is called ISTAC,
It's,
International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAC. It's
mm-hmm.
quite nearby to IKIM's premise, right?
Yes.
I'll share more about this ISTAC because I think this also made him globally known, Trisha.
Mm-hmm.
But also, aside from that, he's a gifted calligrapher and designer because this ISTAC that you will see after this, I will show pictures of this. He designed
Mm-hmm.
everything, the building,
Mm-hmm.
the furnitures, the
Oh,
garden, everything. He designed. Again, he sketched it. He would draw it. He- and he didn't go
that's
to art
very
school.
interesting.
He didn't go to architecture school. He didn't go to art school.
I see. So it means that if you go to Easter, we can see his personal touch, his personal
Yes,
design on the buildings.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting.
he's a multi-talented man. In other words, he's not just a
Yes.
scholar. He's a multi-talented man. And
Mm-hmm.
also in terms of his keturunan, his descent, he's one
Mm-hmm.
of those. That's why he's called a Syed in Arabic, or in Malay we
Mm-hmm.
call Syed, right?
Say it.
It's spelled Syed, but he's a descendant. Basically, there people like him. They have a genealogy, family tree, which is very clear, which links themselves all the way to at least the grandsons of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Professor Atas has a family tree. I mean, he has a family tree
Mm-hmm.
which goes all the way through the grandson, because the Prophet had Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein as grandsons, and Prophet Atas is coming from the lineage of Sayyidina Hussein, that grandson of the Prophet. right?
Sayyidina Hussein.
So from him to Sayyidina Hussein or to the Prophet is 37 generation. So that's
Mm.
1,400 years kind of family tree. Because the
Correct.
Arabs, so the Arabs, they really preserve their family tree. So
Mm.
they really know this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
even some family members of the Arabs who are not related to the Prophet, they know their family tree, like for that goes all the way back for centuries.
Mm.
And interestingly, the ancestors of Rosaratas, his great grandfather, his great great grandfather, they contributed a lot to the spread of Islam in this part of the world. In the fact that in Malaysia, Indonesia, southern Thai, southern Philippines, all together,
Oh,
there's almost 200 million Muslims, right, Patricia?
yes, yes.
Yes, and it was not merely traders from the Arab world who spread Islam here. They
Oh,
were they were scholars, they were missionaries.
mm-hmm.
Some of them, they have business.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the identity of who spread Islam in the Malay world is more or less known by now by today because of there has been research studies, and among those responsible are the ancestors of Persalatas.
Ah, that's very
So
interesting.
so he's just continuing the mission, the legacy, the efforts of his forefathers because for them
Mm-hmm.
is about educating people about knowledge, about
Mm-hmm.
wisdom, about the truth. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about rank, it's not about power, it's not about popular fame. For them, it's
Mm-hmm.
a mission, it's a trust, it's an amana,
Yes.
right? So that's why this man, he's so serious in what he does in terms of
Mm-hmm.
his work, and
Yes.
you can see that this is some of his writings,
Mm-hmm.
and he wrote books on basically that is very important to understand Islamic civilization. If before this we've been talking about the Islamic legacy, Islamic civilization in Uzbekistan, this is a man, his writings will help you to understand better about that civilization that we had in the past, right? In
Mm-hmm.
terms of the perspective, what is the key ideas, how did they understand what this idea of justice is, what is their perspective, how did they educate the community. Prasantas, he tells us all about that, not only
Mm-hmm.
telling us in the historical sense, which he does. He has written some books on history, but he's also telling us how we can recover and relearn that this all this knowledge that Muslims in Islamic civilization had,
Mm-hmm.
right? So because for him, Islam is not just a ritual, it's a religion and a civilization.
Yes.
So that's what we have seen in the
Mm-hmm.
past and in different parts of the Muslim world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is and his writings is so significant. Even someone as some of you may have heard of Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, an American scholar, Muslim scholar, but he's American. He too was influenced or find that the writings of Professor Atas of Malaysia very significant. He said that his book, one of his book called Islam and Secularism, to be a stunning analysis of what went wrong in the Muslim world. I've been a Muslim because he's a convert, this Hamza Yusuf, but now he's a scholar, right? He's 60 years old plus, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I've been Muslim. He said this when he was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur in 2019. I've been a Muslim now for 42 years and can say with great deal of conviction that Syed Naquib Al-Attas is probably the greatest influence on my understanding of the crisis in the Muslim world and also what needs to be done in order to heal that crisis, in order to solve that crisis. So his efforts has been recognized even before this 500 Muslim entity have declared him Man of the Year in the Muslim world, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so this is just one example who in terms of a renowned Muslim figure who recognizes the contributions and achievement of Professor Atas. And then, of course, he doesn't. Professor Atas. Sometimes people think that he only talks about the problem because he does elaborate and analyze what is the problem in the Muslim world. Is the in the thinking, in terms of the understanding of this and that. But also he has a vision and a plan for it in terms of the solution, in terms of the Muslim Ummah, what they need to do. And
Mm-hmm.
he's been talking about the solution since the 70s, Patricia. And
70.
he since the 70s, and he's been
50 years
talking and
ago.
50 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
he proposed a solution not only in Malaysia to the politicians in Malaysia, but to the OIC, to the Muslim world.
Mm-hmm.
This document on the left, which is not very clear, is actually a letter he wrote to Tunku Abdul Rahman, who was then the chairman of the OIC,
Tunku Abdul Rahman, the first Prime Minister
Prime
of
Minister of
Malaysia.
Malaysia. So this is
Mm-hmm.
a letter written by Professor Attas to Tunku Abdul Rahman, because Tunku Abdul Rahman by then, he was the chairman of the OIC,
Mm-hmm.
the first chairman of the OIC, Tunku
The
Abdul
first
Rahman,
chairman of OIC. So it was 50 years ago.
50 years ago. So because
Mm-hmm.
as chairman of the OIC, Tunku Abdul Rahman was looking for inputs and advice
Okay.
from scholars from every part of the Muslim world in terms of what we can do. Because even then they were dealing with this problem of Palestine. This was in
Mm-hmm.
the 70s, right? Already they were dealing with the problem of Palestine. And although Muslim countries have become independent, because remember we were colonized, many parts of the Muslim world were colonized by the British, by the
Yes.
French, by many other powers. And then the Ottoman Empire collapsed, right? So 20th
Mm-hmm.
century was a great upheaval for the Muslim world. It was like chaotic for the Muslim world.
Mm-hmm.
So, but for the first time, the Muslim world was able to converge on a single entity called the OIC. So, Tunku Abdul Rahman, so Professor Atas wrote this letter to Tunku Abdul Rahman. Look, this is a two-page letter basically, typewritten by his secretary. Maybe he wrote in hand again. He wrote in hand,
Wow.
but he wrote typewritten.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, he's saying that the problem that Muslim, because Professor Atas is a well-traveled man, he was trained in the best military school in the West. Of course, he traveled in the Muslim world a lot. He met Muslim leaders, Muslim scholars. So by the 70s, he could see that the problem in the Muslim world is a problem of knowledge, the corruption of knowledge, the problem of education also. We're not getting the kind of knowledge and wisdom and education that will produce uh, great leaders who will make important moves in the
Mm-hmm.
interest of the ummah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very deep problem and requires deep solutions and long-term solutions. So by 1977, Prof. was invited as among the keynote speakers in Mecca, right? On the right, there is the publication and proof of that. On the first World Conference on the Muslim World Conference on Muslim Education. This is the first ever in the modern Muslim history. First
Mm-hmm.
World Conference on Muslim Education. It was held in Mecca. And Professor Atas basically presented his thoughts on the nature of knowledge and definition and aims of education. Sounds like a very simple
Yeah.
topic, but
Yes.
actually it's revolutionary,
Mm-hmm.
because no one has written or thought about how he thought about knowledge and education in that way, considering the challenges that the Muslim world is facing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But only in the 90s, the late 80s, 90s, that he was able to put his vision, his plan into reality. And as I said, he would design this whole building of this institute that he founded himself.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he couldn't have done this without the support, the aid, the assistance of those whom Allah have guided to support him.
Mm-hmm.
And among those who have supported him very significantly and strategically in the government back then was our current Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, who was then Minister of Education and subsequently Deputy Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting.
so this institute was placed, it had an autonomous status, although it's linked to the Islamic University. And
Mm-hmm.
Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was the chairman of the board of governors of ISTAC then.
Mm-hmm.
So Professor Atas was given the support, financial support, the administrative support to put this into action, not only for
Mm-hmm.
Malaysia but for the Muslim world.
Mm-hmm.
This is an institute to train future intellectuals, future scholars, future leaders for the Muslim world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was and you can see the sketching here for those who are watching on our video. One sketch of the building and how it looks like in reality, and the one on top right is a logo, again in calligraphy, beautiful calligraphy designed
Mm-hmm.
by Prophet Atas, and in the center is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, referring to the Prophet, because for him the role model that we have to emulate when you talk about education is the Prophet Muhammad. That is the perfect example. You have to try to strive. You cannot be like him, of course, but he
Mm-hmm.
always be the role model, because this is how it's been for centuries in Islamic civilization, right?
Yes.
So because he noticed sometimes, in some parts of the Muslim world, we have forgotten this, to put Muhammad in the center of our attention, our consciousness, when we try to educate our people. Sometimes the focus has been too much on producing workers,
Yes.
producing what do you call this? Merely good citizens,
Mm-hmm.
citizens of the country, but they have forgotten that this spiritual connection with the Prophet Muhammad, this sort of being about being a good human being. So his idea about this in this institute is to rethink, redefine what education ought to mean, because in the 20th century Muslim world, we have got it a bit confused. Our priorities has been mixed up a bit. So he wants to make sure that we have a very high quality education of future Muslim intellectuals and leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose is very clear. The purpose is to produce a good human being,
Mm-hmm.
not only a good citizen or a good worker. Because if you produce, your focus of education is only to produce a good citizen or a good worker, you may not necessarily be a good human being.
Mm-hmm.
So there is like this conflict in the modern world, right? Especially in the Western world. They may be good workers, great CEOs, great executives, great what you call it, citizens, right?
Citizens.
Law-abiding citizens. But
Mm-hmm.
in the personal level, they have problems. They have personal problems.
Mm-hmm.
They have ethical problems. They have spiritual problems. They have psychological problems. So Professor Atas wanted to address this for not only the Muslim world but for humanity, obviously, because the
Mm-hmm.
Islamic civilization, the Muslim Ummah, is meant to be the middle community, the Ummatan Wasatan for the rest of humanity. We should supposed to be the middle, the most balanced, the most
Mm-hmm.
just community. So
Mm-hmm.
this is an initiative by Professor Atas to achieve that in the
Mm-hmm.
best way possible.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been operating for a good number of years. And he brought in, with thanks to the for support and funding of the government, then he brought in the most prominent and the most able scholars anywhere in the Muslim world as well as the Western world. So he got scholars from Turkey, from Africa, from the Arab world, who can synergize and work together with him to produce the best kind of sort of outcome, right, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
education. And he was hoping that this model could then be replicated to other parts of the Muslim world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, since then, Professor Atas has been more and more respected and known globally, in the Muslim world as well as the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when but as he got older, he continued to attract attention. Yeah. So you can see here some pictures of international scholars visiting at his house. This is
His
his house,
house.
by the way. Just a
Mm-hmm.
small apartment. Uh,
Mm.
but the top right is one of the most influential Arab scholar as well. His name is Sheikh Ali Jum'ah of Al Azhar. And if you look at the 500 influential Muslim, he's always at the top, even beating
Oh, okay.
politicians and presidents. This Ali Jum'ah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But he would take the time when he was in Malaysia, he would take the effort and time to visit Professor Latas. So this
Mm-hmm.
is the way scholars show recognition, show respect,
With
and
each other.
with each other, because they
Mm-hmm.
know there is somebody knowledgeable. They should visit and pay courtesy visit and show their respect.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, all this what I'm showing is, it shows that I think not only that he it's justified for him to be the man of the year, but also maybe he's been the man of decades or century
None of
even.
the
The Muslim
Yes.
world could be, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes.
requires further study.
Yes.
And so yeah, I mean, this sharing doesn't do justice at all, Patricia, to him,
Mm-hmm.
to this man of the year in the Muslim world. But I feel at the very least, we should, at the very least, at least IKIM Radio gives him some attention, some show of respect in the limited questions that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are many of his students, I think, can share many more things. I think if you can reach out to his students, he doesn't have the energy to lecture like he used to like before. But one interesting, I think, news is that he may be giving a public lecture again, maybe in February next year.
Next year. Mm.
Yeah. So maybe those interested, they can be on the lookout in the social media,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook or Instagram, and the host entity for him is the Raja Zarif Sofia Center
Oh.
for Advanced Studies on Islam, Science and Civilization. So Raja Zarif Sofia patronizes this postgraduate school at UTM where she is chancellor. So this school, this center is where Professor Attas is affiliated. Before he was a distinguished visiting scholar, but for his events, like recently and the next one, it will be hosted by them. So if anyone is interested, they can look up for this RZS Cassis, CASIS, on Facebook and I think Instagram, and you can find news about his future talks if it happens, inshallah.
Mm-hmm.
But to conclude, I would like to end with this particular quote which I came across when I was studying Batrisyia. Is by a scholar by the name of Shamsuddin Muhammad Ibn Abdurrahman As-Sakhawi. He died in 1497, about 500 years ago. But what he says here, I think, is struck to me as something that is very Quranic, because I know he's referring to a particular verse in the Quran, where and he says basically in this quote, for those of you who are not watching on the video, he said that Sakhawi said, God has not created man equal in knowledge, and that in every generation there are only a few to whom the others must turn in times of crisis. So we are in the times of crisis actually now, not only in the political sense where we're seeing the issue of Palestine, but globally we have a civilizational crisis, we have an intellectual crisis, we have a spiritual crisis. Our generation, our younger generation is suffering. They have mental health crisis,
Mm-hmm.
they have environmental crisis. All this tells us that we're in a times of crisis, right? uh, so sometimes I think the way forward to tackle, to confront, or to find solutions is sometimes it's not necessarily in universities or not necessarily in government. Sometimes we need to find the right people who God has given some insight, some wisdom to give some advice, to give some kind of a solution. You see, because
A
sometimes it's
guide.
a guide. Because historically in Islamic civilization, that's how our Muslim community function. There's always a scholar who's like very brilliant in it, who would advise the rulers, who advise the community, society to do the right thing, to do certain things, so that we
Mm-hmm.
can overcome our crisis. Because the issue of Palestine didn't happen only in the 20th 21st century. Even
Mm-hmm.
in the time of Ghazali 1000 years ago, Ghazali
1,000 years.
saw the Crusaders, right? The Crusaders were capturing Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And even for people like Ghazali, this luminary, this great scholar, he saw that the solution, of course, there are short-term solutions we can do in terms of military and fights, right? For those who are in that position. But in the long term, there's something that we must do, that we should do in terms of knowledge, because maybe sometimes these things happen because there's certain shortcomings within us. Of course, we don't deny there are other forces that um, they want to control us, dominate us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Zionist forces. But in the same time, we cannot solely point the finger outside. There's always internal reasons to the crisis that is besetting us, the crisis that is happening to us, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think this is the way of the believer, the Muslim. There's always a muhasabah, right? So of course we should be outraged. We should voice out our displeasure of the injustices done inflicted upon us. But at the same time, we have to have this positive resistance against ourselves, so that we will be truly worthy of this deen, of this religion, so that we can one day liberate anyone who has been inflicted with injustice, not only Muslims but also in non-Muslims. I think that is the role. Again, this is our role as Ummatan Wasatan, the middle community, the truly just and balanced community.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're not quite there yet. as a community, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we need to pay more attention to those whom Allah has given more knowledge, more
Mm-hmm.
insight, more wisdom, because
Yes.
that's just how things are. Allah does not give same level of knowledge to everyone. So but that doesn't mean that the one who has lesser knowledge is less important or not important. No, Islam does not say that. On the contrary, everyone has a place, everyone has a role,
Mm-hmm.
everyone has a unique sort of reason for existence.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to uh, complement each other. And some people
Yes.
have a certain advantage, certain strength, certain intellectual strength, certain moral strength. So we need
Yes.
to try to benefit from that, so that each of us can truly fulfill our potential as a human
Mm-hmm.
being, as a Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how I would conclude not only this particular episode, Patricia, but for this whole season 9 of
Yes,
Shaping
is it?
Tomorrow. And Allah
Yeah.
knows best. Allah knows best. And these are some readings I'm sharing on the slide for those who are interested to know more about this figure, written by others about his contributions and achievements. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Doctor, for your sharing on to this topic. Man of the Year in Muslim world, Syed Muhammad Naquib Al-Attas. And I think it's a very great way to end this season with a great man of Syed Muhammad Naquib Al-Attas with his contribution to the Muslim world. And as even mentioned before, he has been declared as a Man of the Year in Muslim world. And in fact, it might be not just for the year, but also might be for the decades, perhaps, with his contribution. We cannot deny of his significance. And Islam does not only promote knowledge, but also there's a balance with morality. So, you
Yes.
cannot just be a clever person, but you also have some sort of like attitude and
Yes.
also moral. And
Yes.
with that being said, Doctor, I would like to thank you again for your sharing for the past 12 to 13 episodes of Shaping Tomorrow. And dear listeners, thank you also for listening to us for the past season. We really appreciate for the support. And Doctor, thank you for being with us for the last time in the studio. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi